You mean nothing to me anymore. Don't ever set foot in this house again." My father yelled at me. The only support I had was from Elliot, the man I was soon going to marry. With tears streaming down my face, I left the place I had always called home. This happened right after I graduated from high school. Hi, I'm Sienna, a 34-year-old farmer, and it's been 16 years since that painful day. The years I've spent living on my own now outnumber the time I spent in my family's home, and this fact stirs up some deep emotions inside me. I grew up in the city. My dad worked in a corporate job, while my mom stayed home to care for the family. There were 4 of us in total: my parents, my brother, and me. My brother was a year older, and for as long as I can remember, my parents treated us very differently. In their eyes, my brother was always the favorite. He was the one they saw as the heir, so everything he had was better. His meals were bigger and fancier, and his birthday gifts were more extravagant. My brother loved to brag about being treated better than me. He made it clear that he believed he was superior, and I often felt left out. Many nights, I would cry, longing for attention, but no matter how much I wished for things to change, my parents remained the same. Eventually, I gave up trying. Everything changed for me one summer during my second year of high school. At the time, my brother was stressing out about his upcoming college entrance exams. He was aiming to get into one of the top universities, but his practice exam scores were terrible. This made him constantly irritable, and he often took out his frustration on me. My parents, acting as if my brother were some fragile glass object, treated him with the utmost care. Meanwhile, they dumped all the household chores on me, leaving me with little to no time to focus on my own studies. My grades were better than my brother's, and I suspect my parents wanted to keep it that way, thinking it would boost his confidence. It was completely unfair and made no sense. Around that time, my teacher mentioned a program where students could spend a few days on a farm, experiencing life in the countryside. It was a 2-night, 3-day event where we would stay with a host family, help with harvesting vegetables, cook meals together, and get a taste of rural life. Feeling overwhelmed by the tension at home, I decided to sign up. Of course, my father was completely against the idea. He scoffed at it, saying, "Only people who can't get real jobs in the corporate world would ever resort to farming." My mother joined in, laughing at the thought of me willingly doing manual labor and getting dirty in the fields. Despite their harsh words, I made up my mind to go. For the first time in my life, I went against my parents' wishes and used the money I had saved from my allowance to sign up for the program. It was a bold move, and looking back, it was the best decision I could have made. For someone starved of love and affection, the experience was like a breath of fresh air. Being in the countryside, working in the open fields, and breathing the clean air was exactly what I needed. And more importantly, for the first time in my life, I experienced the warmth of a real, loving family. The family I stayed with had an eldest son named Elliot. He was a year older than me, the same age as my brother. At first, I was cautious around him, simply because I wasn't used to being around older guys. But Elliot was nothing like my brother. He was kind, yet firm, and he had a great relationship with his parents. He treated me with kindness, too. Elliot's parents were incredibly gentle and caring. Even though I was only there for 3 days, I cried when it was time to leave. Elliot's mother hugged me tightly, telling me, "You're welcome back anytime, dear." I promised her that I would return someday. They weren't big on using cell phones, so I started writing them letters regularly. Elliot replied often, and before long, we were exchanging letters back and forth like an old-fashioned diary. That's how our relationship blossomed, even though it was long distance and innocent, just pure friendship, without even a kiss. Back at home, my brother eventually failed to get into the university he wanted and ended up enrolling in a lower-ranked private college. When it was my turn to apply for college, my parents pressured me to skip higher education and get a job instead. Their reasoning? Women don't need a degree, they said. But I knew the real reason. They didn't want me to surpass my brother. Ever since that rural experience, I had dreamed of becoming a farmer. I knew I could pursue that dream without going to college, but since Elliot had moved to the city to attend college, I figured I'd give it a shot too. I wanted to study modern farming methods and maybe even start a new type of farming. Fueled by my goals, I studied hard every day, despite my parents' and brother's constant attempts to distract me. And when I finally passed the entrance exam for a good university, my father was enraged. "How dare you, as a woman, go to a better university than your brother?" he bellowed. My mother added, "We don't have money for you. Your brother needs it more. You should just work and help support the family." I was heartbroken by my parents' harsh words, and after a huge argument, I made the tough decision to cut ties with them completely. Elliot, the man I loved, came to pick me up from my childhood home, and his parents, who are now my in-laws, generously supported my college education. With their help, I was able to attend college, and 4 years later, Elliot and I got married. During my college years, I didn't reach out to my parents or brother. I kept my distance, but when the time came to get married, my in-laws insisted that we inform my family. "We need to at least let them know about the wedding," they said. So for the first time in 4 years, we visited my parents' house. Right after I graduated, things were chaotic. It was also planting season on the farm, so we couldn't visit until early summer. My in-laws, Elliot, and I had all been working outside under the sun, so our faces were darkened and sunburned from the hard work. As soon as we arrived, my family mocked us openly. My mother looked at us and asked, "No offense, but how old are you guys? You must be quite poor to be working so hard that you're all sunburnt like this." Her words cut deep, and I was mortified. "Please stop, Mom," I begged in a small voice, but she ignored me. My brother, with a smug smile, added, "Smart people like me make money with intellectual work. Only people who aren't intelligent end up doing such primitive labor." I turned pale, and the gentle smiles on my in-laws' faces froze. Elliot, standing by my side, spoke up firmly. "With all due respect, we are proud to be farmers." My father, still looking down on us, laughed condescendingly. "Let me make this clear," he said to me. "You're nothing to us anymore. You're marrying a poor farmer who has to sweat for his money. Don't expect anything from us, and don't ever come asking for money. We don't want to see you anymore." I had already been disowned when I was 16, so their words didn't come as a surprise. Still, I had hoped that with time, things might have changed. But this visit only confirmed that my biological family wanted nothing to do with me. As we left, the sympathetic looks from my in-laws and Elliot were hard to bear. On the way home, I quietly cried and made a firm decision to let go of my biological family for good. Time passed quickly, and before I knew it, 16 years had gone by. The emotional scars had healed. I had 2 children, and my life was busy but fulfilling. I had almost completely erased the memories of my parents and brother from my mind. But one day, a cousin of mine called to tell me that my brother was getting married. This cousin and I had always stayed in touch, even after I got married. Occasionally, I'd send them rice from our farm, and they became regular buyers, loving the taste of our produce. We enjoyed chatting on the phone, and during one of our conversations, my cousin mentioned, "We'll get to meet at your brother's wedding." I hadn't heard a word about the wedding from my brother or parents, but that wasn't surprising given how estranged we were. My cousin also told me that my brother was building a new duplex, and both my parents and my brother planned to move there after the wedding. After finishing the call with my cousin, I had a sudden urge to try contacting my family. I dialed my mother's cell phone number, but I was greeted with an automated message saying the number was no longer in service. I tried my father's number next, but the same message played. It seemed they had changed their phone numbers, and since I didn't know my brother's number, I couldn't reach him either. With trembling fingers, I called the landline for my family's home. The phone rang, and to my surprise, my brother answered. "Hello." "Brother, it's Sienna," I said nervously. "I heard you're getting married and moving." I just wanted to, but before I could finish my sentence, he cut me off. "There's no need for you to do anything. You're a stranger to me, a farmer. Don't call me again," he snapped, and then hung up the phone. I immediately tried calling back, but I had already been blocked. The rejection was harsh, even though I had expected it. No matter how much my brother disliked me, we were still family, and it hurt to be dismissed so coldly. Seeing my distress, Elliot gently asked, "What happened?" I couldn't hold back my tears any longer and told him about the conversation. Both Elliot and my in-laws were furious, as if the insult had been directed at them. "Your home is here with us, Sienna. We are your family now," my mother-in-law said, her words filled with kindness. Her reassurance brought me to tears again. I wished she were my real mother because she cared for me far more than my biological mother ever had. My father-in-law chimed in, saying, "You're happy now, and that's what matters. Don't let their words hurt you. In the end, the one who smiles is the one who wins." Elliot added, "Let's use them as a reminder of how not to be. We'll never let our family turn out like that." Even our children, who didn't fully understand the situation, hugged me tightly. I felt such warmth and love for my true family. Though I wasn't blessed with a supportive biological family, I realized just how happy and fortunate I was now. But things took an unexpected turn when our farming business was featured on national television. My in-laws had always been large-scale grain farmers, and they also grew a variety of fruits and vegetables. Over time, I found ways to make use of produce that couldn't be sold due to minor imperfections. I had studied food business in college and created a successful online store selling jams, juices, and pickles made from slightly damaged fruits and vegetables. Supported by the local farmers union, my business became a huge success, particularly among moms looking for safe, locally produced food for their children and seniors who miss the taste of homemade pickles. The company grew to a $10 million business, and when it was featured in a detailed report on television, we received a flood of attention from new customers, business partners, and media outlets interested in our story. The company phone and my personal smartphone were ringing nonstop, and amidst all the calls, one from an unknown number caught me off guard. I answered it without thinking, only to be surprised by the voice on the other end. It was my brother. I could tell immediately that he must have seen the national television feature about our business. Barely exchanging pleasantries, he jumped straight to his request. "I'm starting a business. Can you lend me some money?" I was taken aback. "Excuse me?" I said, but the answer was clear in my mind. "That would be a no," I replied, feeling a mix of frustration and disbelief. Without waiting for a response, I hung up. Almost immediately, he called again. This time, his voice was full of entitlement. "Stop arguing and just give me the money. If a woman like you can start a business and make money, then I'm bound to be successful," he shouted, as though his words could bully me into submission. I couldn't believe the audacity. Where did he get this arrogance from? How could someone who had once disowned me think it was acceptable to demand money like this? Especially after all the years he had treated me like I didn't matter. I didn't respond to his outburst. Instead, I asked something that had been weighing on my mind for a while. "Who decided not to tell me about the move?" I asked calmly. "Huh? Of course it was me and my wife. She's a city girl, you know, and the moment I mentioned you, she said we should cut ties," he said, with no hint of regret. That was all I needed to hear. I didn't want to know more. I hung up, blocked his number, and tried to move on. It was clear to me now that my brother's wife, whom I had never met, shared the same shallow values as my brother and parents. It dawned on me that if my brother had seen the television feature, it was likely that my parents had too. I wasn't surprised when, a few hours later, another unknown number appeared on my phone. This time, it was my father. "Why are you the boss? Did you steal some man's job?" he demanded. I took a deep breath and explained. Both Elliot and my father-in-law are heavily involved in the farming business. It's only natural that we run it together. I gave him a brief explanation about large-scale farming consolidation and how it made sense for us to incorporate the business. Elliot and my father-in-law were both key figures in the local agricultural community, and together, we had grown the business into something successful. Maybe my explanation worked because my father's tone shifted slightly. "You've been distant. Why haven't you contacted us?" he asked. Dumbfounded, I replied, "You disowned me, remember?" I ended the conversation there and blocked his number as well. But it didn't stop. Minutes later, my mother called. "Why aren't you giving your brother money? I heard your business makes $500 million a year. Send some of that home. We're your real family, and we raised you. At least give us $550 million, or $500 million at the very least," she demanded. Her aggression shocked me. Even though the business made substantial revenue, I had to cover expenses and pay employee salaries, so there wasn't nearly as much left over as she assumed. I exaggerated the financial situation a bit, but she didn't believe me. "You're lying. That can't be true," she snapped. I was growing irritated. She had no shame in asking for money, even though she had never supported me when I needed it most. "I'm not going to send you money, whether I have it or not. We're strangers now," I said firmly, before hanging up and blocking her number. I thought that would be the end of it, but I was wrong. My parents, my brother, and his wife, who I had never met, showed up unannounced at my in-laws' house. My father smugly said, "Sienna, we've got a surprise for you. We're revoking your disownment." I was stunned. How desperate could they be for money? My mother-in-law, clearly uncomfortable, asked, "What's going on with you people?" The tension in the room was palpable. My father-in-law and mother-in-law stared silently at my family, while our employees gathered around, watching the scene unfold with shock and disbelief. My brother spoke up, claiming, "We're your real family. We deserve the money you earned, too." His wife nodded in agreement, as if they had any right to my hard-earned success. Furious, I couldn't hold back anymore. "I don't think so," I said sharply. "Even if we share blood, we have no emotional connection. You abandoned me, treated me like a stranger." As the emotional scars of my past started to resurface, I was on the verge of tears. But then Elliot stepped beside me, standing tall. "Sienna is part of our family now. We don't need your disownment to be happy. Please leave," he said firmly. The employees, sensing the situation, chimed in, supporting us. "How rude. What were you thinking?" they shouted. I realized then that I was surrounded by people who truly cared about me. This was my real family, and I felt a deep sense of happiness and belonging. My brother, now red with anger, shouted, "Shut up. Shut up, you country bumpkins. You're all uneducated trash." Elliot, keeping his composure, responded calmly, "Well, both I and my father are Ivy League graduates, and Sienna graduated from a top university in agriculture." My brother's face twisted in disbelief. "What? Ivy League? Then why are you farming?" he asked, confused and surprised. For my brother, whose only pride was his low-ranking university degree, this revelation was a blow. Elliot explained, "Farming is a respectable profession. We're able to apply everything we learned in college to our work." I couldn't help but laugh. For the first time, I felt relief. "Brother, you've lost to Elliot in everything." With newfound confidence, I said, "Let me be clear one last time. We are already strangers. I won't lend or give money to strangers. Please leave. If you make a scene, I'll call the police." My in-laws and Elliot stood protectively by my side, and I felt an overwhelming sense of love and support. The employees echoed our sentiments, shouting for my family to leave. My parents, brother, and his wife glared at us, but they couldn't say anything more. They left in silence. Later, I heard from my cousin that my brother and parents had tried to start a business and failed miserably. They were now on the brink of bankruptcy, but that was no longer my concern. I had cut ties with them for good. As for me, my life was flourishing. I was surrounded by a loving husband, wonderful children, and in-laws who treated me with the care and respect I had always longed for. Every day, I cherished the happiness I had found in my new family.